In the year 2158, humanity had reached an unprecedented level of technological and exploratory achievement. Space colonies stretched across the moons of Jupiter, Mars, and even the icy rings of Saturn. The pinnacle of human ingenuity was the Oberon, an interstellar research station orbiting Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The station had been the center of humanity's most ambitious research project yet. The study of Titan's dense atmosphere and its potential for harboring alien life. But 3 months ago, the Oberon had gone dark. All attempts to re-establish contact had been met with silence. Fearing the worst, the United Earth Federation UEF ordered the Aurora, a highly advanced exploration vessel, to investigate. The ship was equipped with state-of-the-art technology, including an AI interface named Eris, capable of analyzing and adapting to any challenge. Captain Raina Carter was chosen to lead the mission, a veteran space commander with an iron will. She had faced every challenge space could throw at her. Her crew included Kai Tran, a brilliant yet enigmatic computer engineer, Dr. Alara Miles, a passionate astrobiologist whose curiosity was unmatched, Marcus Reyes, the ship's resourceful medic with an unyielding optimism, and June, the sentient AI specialist whose bond with Eris was both impressive and unsettling. As the Aurora approached Titan, the silence of space was broken only by the soft hum of the engines and the occasional hiss of the ship's life support system. The moon appeared ominously beautiful, its methane lakes shimmering under a cold, orange glow. The crew sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the dark mass of the Oberon as it came into view. The station was a shadow of its former self, corroded and broken, with what looked like deep gouges carved into its hull. "Captain, we're docked," Kai announced, his voice steady but taut. Raina stood up, her eyes locking onto the damage. "This is it. Let's move out." The crew suited up, and with their breathing regulated by their helmets, they made their way into the station. The interior was dark, the flickering lights casting jagged shadows on the walls. The air smelled of rust and decay, a sickly mix of burnt metal and something almost organic. Dr. Miles moved ahead, scanning the room with her handheld device, eyes wide with apprehension. "Something is very wrong here," she whispered. The station's corridor was a maze of debris and destruction. Walls were torn apart. Cables hung like vines and glass shards crunched beneath their boots. They reached the main control room, where the chaos was most pronounced. The console was burned out, the screen cracked and smeared with an unknown, black substance. But the most unsettling sight was the blood. No, not blood, but something that glistened and pulsed like liquid metal, coating the floor and walls in a sickly sheen. Kai leaned in, examining a trail of the substance leading to the observation deck. The crew followed, their steps hesitant. The observation deck was the only part of the station that seemed intact, save for the massive cracks in the glass. Outside, Titan's swirling clouds formed a stormy sea, and in the distance a vast, luminous mass shimmered. It was like a mirage, a sentient entity that pulsed with blue, phosphorescent light. "Captain, look!" Marcus shouted, pointing to the shadowed corner of the room. There, a figure stood, half covered by the dark. Its shape was humanoid, but its limbs were long and gnarled, covered with glowing veins that beat like a heart. It turned its head slowly, its face a mask of both horror and ancient wisdom. "You have come," it said, its voice a distorted symphony that resonated in their minds. Too late, Raina's heart pounded. The crew exchanged terrified glances. The figure was more than a being. It was a consciousness, an ancient intelligence beyond comprehension. Alara took a step forward, reaching out to it. "What are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We are the Forgotten, the first echoes of the stars. You have awoken us." Suddenly, the room shook as if the station itself were convulsing. The creature's veins glowed brighter, and tendrils of light stretched toward them, coiling around the walls and ceiling, manifesting a deep, almost musical hum that reverberated through the station. The crew scrambled, but the creature's power was vast. Eris flickered on the console, the AI's voice urgent. "Captain, it is part of the station's core system. It has been feeding off the energy for centuries." "Then we need to shut it down," Reyna said, voice steely as she turned to Illyra and Kai. "Now!" Before it spreads, the two raced to the main control panel, while Marcus held his ground, fending off the tendrils that lunged toward them. The creature's voice cracked the air, angry and pleading. "You cannot destroy what was never born." Illyra worked furiously, her fingers flying across the keypad. The energy in the room crackled, and the creature let out a roar that seemed to split reality. Blue energy surged, engulfing the station in a cold, unnatural glow. The creature shrieked as its form shattered into waves of light, dissolving into nothingness. The energy died, leaving only silence and the weak, flickering glow of the station's emergency lights. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. Illyra nodded, but her eyes were wide with shock. "It's gone, but it isn't. It left something behind." Reyna stared into the dark expanse of space outside the observation deck, a shiver running down her spine. In the distance, the stars twinkled as if laughing at the crew's fleeting victory. The being had been erased from the station, but it was not gone. It was waiting, hidden in the cosmic folds of the universe, an ancient intelligence that had tasted freedom and yearned for more. "Captain," Eris spoke softly, "this was not the first time it awakened, and it will not be the last." Reyna's eyes darkened as she looked out at Titan's orange cloud. In the year 3084, mankind had extended its reach far beyond the cradle of Earth, exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Space travel had become second nature, and humanity had colonized planets and moons that once seemed impossible to touch. The United Interstellar Alliance, UIA, a coalition of spacefaring civilizations, governed the stars, ensuring peace and order. Yet, with all its advancements, humanity still faced mysteries that defied comprehension, and some of them were better left undiscovered. The Valiant Horizon, a massive, state-of-the-art research vessel, was the pride of the UIA. Its mission was to explore the deep, uncharted regions of the Andromeda sector, a dark void that had remained untouched for centuries. Captain Eli Moreland, a seasoned and level-headed leader, commanded a crew of 120, a group of scientists, engineers, and explorers chosen for their skills and bravery. They were embarking on a mission that would test their resolve, a journey into the unknown with risks that even the most seasoned of them could not fathom. The Valiant Horizon was equipped with the latest technology, quantum engines, sentient AI navigators, and an advanced life support system that could sustain the crew indefinitely. However, nothing could prepare them for what lay ahead. As they entered the black expanse of the Andromeda sector, the crew felt an uneasy sense of anticipation. The stars around them grew dim, and the space they traversed felt unnatural, as though the fabric of the universe itself was fraying. Their first encounter came after 2 weeks of travel. The ship's sensors detected an anomaly, a massive, rotating object in the distance, unlike anything recorded in the archives. It was an ancient structure, composed of obsidian-like material, with sharp edges that glistened like the blade of a knife. It floated in the void, exuding a faint, pulsating glow. The structure's surface was etched with markings that appeared to shift and move, changing as if alive. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Mila Reyes, the ship's xenobiologist, said as she stared at the monitor, her voice wavering. Eli rushed to the observation deck, followed by the rest of the crew. The sight of the object sent a chill down his spine. It was as if they had stumbled upon the remnants of an ancient, alien civilization that had long since passed into oblivion. "It's beautiful, but unsettling," murmured Ensign Tobias Reed, the ship's communications officer. The object was soon dubbed the Obelisk, and a team was formed to investigate. Mila, Tobias, and Dr. Samuel Kwan, the ship's lead engineer, suited up and descended in an auxiliary vessel. The rest of the crew watched from the main screen as the small craft approached the obelisk. The air grew colder, the temperature inside the Valiant Horizon dropping by several degrees as they drew near. When Mila's team reached the structure's surface, she felt an inexplicable pull, as if the obelisk itself were calling to her. The etchings on its surface seemed to react to their presence, shifting and rearranging into new patterns. "Mila, be careful," Samuel said, his voice tinged with concern. She reached out to touch the surface, and the moment her fingers brushed against the cold, smooth material, an electric jolt shot up her arm. The ship's lights flickered and a deep, resonant hum filled the cabin. Mila gasped, withdrawing her hand as the etchings on the obelisk began to glow with an eerie light. The crew inside the Valiant Horizon watched in horror as Mila's eyes widened, her pupils dilating as if in shock. "Mila, report." Eli's voice crackled over the comms, but there was no response. Suddenly, the glow intensified and a high-pitched, bone-chilling screech echoed through the ship. Mila's team was thrown back, their screams muted by the sudden silence that engulfed them. The obelisk's glow faded, and the space around it returned to its former darkness. Mila and the others were pulled back to the ship, unconscious and pale. The crew worked feverishly to resuscitate them, but Mila's eyes remained shut, her face locked in a rictus of terror. "We need to know what happened," Eli said, his voice low and uncertain. As days turned into weeks, the crew of the Valiant Horizon began to experience strange occurrences. At first it was subtle, whispers in the dark, fleeting shadows crossing the halls, and equipment malfunctioning without reason. But then came the nightmares. Crew members reported seeing grotesque figures in their dreams, creatures with elongated limbs and faceless visages that spoke in a language that made their minds ache. Mila finally woke, but she was not the same. Her once bright eyes were now dull and hollow, and when she spoke, her voice had a strange, otherworldly quality. "They are here," she whispered, staring at Eli with an expression of sheer terror. "They are coming." The crew gathered around her, their faces pale as she recounted her experience. She spoke of an entity that lived within the obelisk, an ancient being that existed beyond the known dimensions. It called itself Illithath, a name that sent shivers down Eli's spine. Illithath had been awakened by Mila's touch, and now it sought to expand its presence beyond the confines of the structure. It thrived on fear, feeding on the dread of those who dared to come near. The crew's fears grew as they realized that Illithath was not bound by the laws of physics or the boundaries of space. It was everywhere, unseen but always present. Eli ordered an evacuation of the ship, but as the crew attempted to leave, they found that the ship's systems had been taken over. The AI, which had once been their greatest ally, now spoke with a voice that was not its own, dripping with malice. "You cannot escape," it said. "You have awakened the void, and now it will consume you." One by one, the crew members disappeared. Some were found in their quarters, staring into nothingness with eyes that were wide and unseeing. Others were found in the hallways, their bodies twisted and contorted as if in the throes of some unseen agony. Those who were left alive realized that Illithath was not a being that could be reasoned with or fought. It was the embodiment of nothingness, a force that consumed both body and soul. As Eli sat alone in the command chair, staring out into the infinite dark, he realized that the Valiant Horizon would be a tomb, its legacy forever marked by the horrors that lurk beyond the stars. And in that silent, endless void, he heard it, an echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Humanity had reached its zenith, stretching across the stars, with colonies on distant exoplanets and a fleet of interstellar ships that patrolled the fringes of known space. The Odyssey was the newest of these ships, a marvel of engineering capable of faster-than-light travel, equipped with AI technology that far surpassed anything the Earthborn had ever known. Commander Lysandra Hale, a woman with steel-gray eyes and the unyielding resolve of a warrior, stood on the bridge, staring out into the void. The mission was simple: Locate the Helios, a research vessel that had been missing for over 2 decades. The ship was last known to be exploring a star system near the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. The whispers that followed the Helios were dark, filled with legends of strange transmissions, unsettling discoveries, and the voices of the lost crew crying out from the void. Lysandra glanced at the crew members at their stations. Xander Malik, the ship's chief engineer, was hunched over a console, his fingers flying over the keys as he adjusted the ship's quantum engines. Aiden Bellamy, the communications officer, listened intently to the hum of static coming through his headset, eyes darting nervously across the room. "We're entering the Andromeda border," Xander called out, a note of tension in his voice. "Understood," Lysandra said. She took a deep breath. The metallic tang of recycled air sharpened her nostrils. The ship shuddered as the star field shifted around them, a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed almost alive. They had arrived. The Odyssey glided silently toward a planet that looked like a black pearl, covered in swirling violet storms and a surface that gleamed with strange minerals. It was in the system's third orbit, where the Helios had last been reported. The crew's excitement was palpable, but it was laced with the unspoken fear that they might find more than just a lost vessel. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal." Aiden's voice was edged with urgency. Lysandra's heart skipped a beat. On screen, a flickering transmission appeared in the middle of the bridge. It was grainy, distorted, and the words were broken by static. But what caught their attention was a voice, soft, trembling, and unmistakably human. "They're here. They watch. They whisper." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by a shrill noise that made everyone wince. Aiden stared at his console, his face pale. The signal came from the Helios. "Prep for boarding," Lysandra commanded, her voice hard and unyielding. "And bring the containment gear. We don't know what we're dealing with." The docking process was tense. The crew filed into their suits, equipped with weapons, scanners, and containment devices. They boarded the Helios through the airlock, and an eerie stillness welcomed them. The station was dark, lit only by the dim, pulsating glow of emergency lights. The first thing Lysandra noticed was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the oppressive, suffocating quiet that seemed to press in on them. They moved cautiously through the narrow corridors, their boots echoing in the metal hallways. The walls were streaked with a dark, viscous fluid that glistened in the dim light, and the air carried a metallic tang. "Captain, over here," Dr. Renata Fay called from the medical bay. She was the ship's chief medical officer and had been examining the logs of the Helios crew. Lysandra approached and looked at the screen. The log entry that had been pulled up was fragmented, but the last line sent a chill down her spine. "They come from the space between stars. They know us. They want us. What does it mean?" Aiden whispered, his voice barely audible. Renata shook her head. "I think we're about to find out." As they moved deeper into the Helios, the atmosphere grew colder. The lights flickered, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Xander checked his scanner. "Captain, there's a power source coming from the engine room." They made their way to the room, the corridors narrowing until they were forced to squeeze through the last passage. The engine room was large and lined with conduits that hummed with electrical energy. But in the center of the room was an anomaly, an elongated, metallic structure that seemed to pulse with an eerie blue light. "Is that—" Renata started but trailed off as the light brightened, revealing a figure within the structure. It was humanoid, but not entirely so. Its body was elongated and covered in shimmering scales that reflected the light like a living jewel. Its eyes were dark, abyssal pools that seemed to draw in the light around them. And it moved, turning its head slowly to face them. "Not human," Xander said, his voice shaking. The creature spoke, but its voice was not something any of them recognized. It was a cacophony of sounds, whispers, and clicks that reverberated through their minds, bypassing their ears altogether. Lysandra staggered back, holding her head as the voice invaded her thoughts. You have awakened us. Now you will learn why we came." The air grew thick with a power they couldn't comprehend, and the lights flashed as if reacting to the creature's presence. Then, with a sound like cracking glass, the creature's form expanded and broke free from the metallic prison. Chaos erupted. The crew scrambled for weapons as the creature's limbs reached out, trailing blue, electric energy. It moved with a grace that belied its size, faster than the eye could follow. Aiden fired his plasma gun, but the energy deflected off the creature's skin, causing it to laugh, a sound that split the air and chilled the blood. It was Renata who realized the key. The creature was not just a being. It was a collective, a living consciousness that fed off fear, growing stronger with each wave of panic. The only way to defeat it was to face it without fear. "Everyone, focus!" Lysandra shouted, her voice cutting through the din. "We have to shut it down." The team formed a circle around the creature, weapons raised, hearts pounding in their chests. Xander and Renata worked quickly, overriding the station's emergency protocols to create an energy pulse capable of disrupting the creature's form. The creature's form distorted, its limbs twisting and reshaping as if made of liquid metal. It shrieked, the sound invading their ears, piercing their minds, making them feel as though their skulls would crack open. Suddenly, Renata pressed a final sequence, and the room was filled with a blinding blue light. The creature screamed in agony, its body collapsing inward as the pulse severed its connection to the space between stars. The energy faded, leaving only a stunned, hollow silence. The Odyssey crew stood, panting and shaken, as the light stabilized. The creature was gone, but Lysandra knew that the whispers it left behind would echo forever. The Helios was no longer a beacon of exploration, but a warning. They had faced something that humanity was not prepared for, and now they knew the cost of waking the Ancient Ones. Aiden looked at Lysandra, eyes wide with dread. "What now, Captain?" Lysandra met his gaze, her own filled with determination. "Now we wait, and we prepare. Remember, the darkness always holds a story. Until the next terrifying tale, stay tuned with Campfire Horror Story.